And good to go. I'm going to call the meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and prayer. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We pray. Lord, keep this nation under your care. Bless the leaders of our land, that we may be a people at peace among ourselves and a blessing to the other nations of the earth. As we come upon elections in just a few short days, grant that we may choose trustworthy leaders who will contribute to wise decisions for the general welfare and serve you faithfully. Grant that we also would make wise decisions and serve you faithfully in our generation. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Roll call. Supervisor Lazansky was asked to be excused. Let's see, I told you another one that was going to be excused. Vollenweider asked to be excused. And waiting for Dell and Augustine. Neither of them said anything to me. Oh, Gillett. Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll carry on in the meantime without them, and we'll see if they show. Okay, so motion, do we need a, okay, we're gonna do the motions on the pads for the agenda. All right, so somebody would make a motion. All right, so you have a motion before you on your pads to approve the agenda. And it is seconded. So motion by Swagel, second by Brown. No amend. You may vote. So 15 in favor, none opposed to passing to approving the agenda. Motion carries. Motion, you'll make a motion on, somebody will make a motion on the pad to approve the previous minutes. So motion by Supervisor Romden, seconded by Supervisor Kinnard. And no amendment. You may vote on the pads. 15 in favor of approving the previous minutes, none opposed. And that motion carries. Citizens input. Do we have any signed up? Does anyone wish to speak to the board? Does anyone wish to speak? Does anyone wish to speak to the board? Okay. Appointments, we have none. Annual reports and other reports as requested by the board. We have Kewaunee County Economic Development Corporation, Mr. Ben Nelson. If you would come forward, Mr. Kunish will make sure that microphone is on. Fabulous, thank you.
Thank you. I passed out ahead of the meeting a little pamphlet of information for all of you to look over, so you can look it over at your leisure or follow along there if you want. But what my main intent presenting here today is I'm not going to go through a lot of our statistics and metrics, because I just recently did that in August, but obviously it's budget time. And the county has been an investor for the KCEDC for a number of years. And it came to my attention that at some of the previous finance committee meetings that there were some questions about, well, confusion about our organization's purpose, who we are, what do we do, are we a chamber of commerce, and those types of things. So I wanted to put together some information to kind of hopefully clarify some of that for some of you that may not be super familiar with that. So the KCEDC, through our board of directors, we have a 17-member board of directors. We take positions on economic issues that affect and impact our local business community. We are essentially the eyes, ears, and voice for Kewaunee County business, educating our partners and communicating our collective voice to those outside of our county. on issues that are of concern to the business climate for not only our county, but also our region. In order for our county to survive, communities to survive, citizens have to have employment opportunities. Its government must be able to generate revenue to be able to provide the services that they do. So economic development, if done effectively, works to retain and grow jobs and investment within our communities. So the tax base that is created through that is used by our local units of government, like the county or some of our municipalities, to provide their services such as police, fire, highway, senior services, and the like. So as a economic development organization for our county, our primary function is to convene, communicate, and connect. I personally do not create jobs or increase the tax base on my own. The private sector makes that investment to create jobs, therefore increasing wealth. And that's a large part of what economic development is. So my job is to facilitate the people, information, opportunities, and sometimes even removing roadblocks to those efforts when those come about. So really our role in economic development comes down in two different basic forms, which is business and community development. So with regards to business development, the KCEDC provides guidance and resources to assist in those three basic forms that I regularly talk about at previous meetings. So our business retention and expansion, attraction, and entrepreneurial development. So in the back portion of your packet are letters of support that serve as examples of some of the community leaders and organizations that our organization has assisted in the last year. Hopefully that answers some of your questions. We put together some infographics on why economic development matters. Some of our success over the course of the last year, that's not those statistics are not lifetime numbers. Those are in 1 year. And I just wanted to kind of clear up any confusion there might be or be available to anybody on the county board that had any specific questions for me and to do that at this time of year. So with that, that's kind of my presentation, but if anybody has any questions, I'll be glad to take a stab at answering them.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Continuing with the administrator's report.
The only thing that I have is I want to thank Mr. Kunish and all the department heads throughout this whole budget process. I think this has been a very smooth process. I think that the document in front of you is clear and easy to understand. Again, if there's any questions, then we can talk about that later in the agenda. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Okay. Committee reports. Are there any questions on highway, solid waste, executive committee, public health and veterans, UW extension, land and water, public safety and justice, finance and public property, human services, parks and promotion, business development, shouldn't be anything, broadband study, and jail strategy hasn't met yet. But we will be reporting back once we do. We will meet soon. All right, first reading of ordinance. We have none. Consideration of resolutions. Mr. Kunish would like to enlighten us first before we go into that.
So just because we only do this once a year, and I believe there's some new members on the board that haven't done this before. You got this book in September. So this is the administrator's proposed budget. Everything in there is still as is. And what you'll be voting on tonight is everything in that book as it's been adjusted by the finance committee, which is page 1 of what was handed out to you. Page 1 is a summary. There are 2 in particular that are several pages long, and those are the pages behind it. And then because you're voting on it tonight, about page 6 I reprinted the summary from the beginning of this book, so you can see this is what you're voting on from this book with the adjustments will equal this. And then a few of the other summary reports, like the summary by fund, as well as the transfers. All of those have been updated to reflect what the Finance Committee has amended to the original administrator's budget as proposed. Any questions? I can answer those.
For Mr. Kunish. Seeing none, we would be looking for a resolution approving the 2023 budget and the 2022 tax levy. So we have a motion by Supervisor Masteler, a second by Supervisor Poppy. No amendment? So, yes. Supervisor Patricia.
I have a quick question with the, looking at some of the changes with the cost of living adjustments. What was the reason for the changing it to 3% at this time? What was the cost impact, the savings, and what was the difference there?
Are you asking the 3% versus what was originally proposed with the 4 point something?
Yes, yeah.
Sure, the reasons were the discussion at executive committee, there were lengthy discussion, always looking at the impact to the taxpayer and sustainability, but also in particular, it would not have benefited as greatly those lower on the pay scale because they would not have received their steps. So with this, those on the lower end receive their steps plus the 3%.
What was the, if we had the 4% with the stipend, that would be a greater
Yeah. it would
a
have
greater
been-
tax burden on the taxpayer?
I don't remember the exact total difference. I believe it would have been because there was also proposed with that was a one-time stipend, or not stipend, but bonus. So there was a 1.5% bonus, I believe. That sounds right, Supervisor Yankee. So it would have been substantially higher overall.
It would have been an increased tax rate.
Mhm. Well, it would have been increased to the taxpayer. I'm not sure exactly what the impact to the tax rate would have been, but obviously in the end, it would have been greater, would have been a greater contribution by the taxpayer.
Do we have a number on what that increased amount on the taxpayer would have been?
1% raise, either stipend or cost of living adjustment. 1% is equal to 82,500.
And how much would that have increased the tax burden?
The tax levy stayed the same because we took that money and applied it elsewhere. So the overall levy change from that one did not, the change to the levy was none because of that, because that money was used elsewhere in the budget.
So it would have been a different allocation of funds as opposed to an increased tax burden?
Correct.
Okay, other questions? Oh, sorry, those don't show up on my pad. I have to look over there for those. Supervisor Romden. Still working out the kinks on this new system.
You're not on, Tom.
Green means go.
As always at budget time, I seem to have amendments that whether they're popular or not, I don't know. One of the things I wanted to discuss tonight was it was really my intent when I came here to make a pitch to not fund KCEDC and instead transfer that $40,000 into the our own economic development fund and have our administrator fund specific economic development tasks, but I don't know if I'm going to go that far tonight. I think the board probably needs to have a serious discussion about our funding of KDC in the future. It is, after all, a private organization, and the taxpayers are funding it probably to at least 40% of their budget, if not more, depending on what city of Algoma kicks in, city of Kewaunee. So I don't know what their total budget is, and I don't know how many There's probably 500 local businesses in the county. How many contribute? It is my understanding that it's probably less than 50, but I could be wrong. So the taxpayer is really funding this organization. And are we going to have other 501(c)(3) corporations in the county come to the county and say, hey, we need some operating money? I don't know, but I'll leave it there. And I think the board should have a serious discussion about this soon in the future. Having said that, I would like to recommend or move to amend the proposed budget by removing the $40,000 funding for KCEDC from the tax levy and fund that $40,000 through the Economic Development Fund. That would be on page 106. Account number 49,200 would be a transfer from other funds, which would go onto that revenue line, and the 40,000 in the expense would stay there. And then at the same time, in that same motion, that $40,000 that's coming off the levy, I would move that it be put into the Highway Department road construction account number. Let me see what the number is here. That's on page 116. It would go into the account number expense 200-533-10-104-902 county trunk highway construction. So that line would be increased by 40,000. And above that, in the revenue side of the highway budget, the property tax levy would increase by 40,000. So that would be my proposed amendment to the budget.
Okay, so
Was that understandable?
sort of. Could you repeat the amendment one more time as succinctly as possible? And did you have those line items so that we have them?
Okay, on page 106, line item 49,200, the revenue account would increase by 40,000, and that would be funds transferred from the Economic Development Fund. The 40,000 on the expense line for KCEDC would remain the same. Then on page 116 under highway, an increase, the $40,000 that was taken off the levy from the Economic Development Fund would go into the county trunk construction account 200-533-110-104. That line item would increase by 40,000, and the tax levy would go into the property taxes in the revenue side of the highway department.
Okay, so essentially the motion is taking the $40,000 that the county would be given the KCEDC out of the general fund, taking it from economic development, and then taking that $40,000 and adding it to the highway department construction fund, correct?
Very, very well stated, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, that is the amendment that you have that has been made. Is there a second to that amendment? Second by Supervisor Lukes, correct? Or no? Yes. So Supervisor Lukes seconded the amendment. So we do not vote yet. We will, is there discussion of the amendment before we proceed to the vote? Any questions on the amendment? Okay, so seeing no questions on the amendment, you may vote on the amendment. So register your vote on your pad. Supervisor Patricia, there we go.
I don't know why I'm not on here.
Blinking blue,
Blinking blue.
blue light special.
I might have turned it off and might have hit this.
Might have turned it off. And hit the microphone. Okay.
There we go. Thank you very much. I'll keep it away from this microphone.
Okay, Supervisor Yonke,
Oh, sorry.
are you still, there we go. Supervisor Romden. So we have 11 yes, 4 no. The motion carries, or the amendment carries. Wait a minute. Okay. She's absent. She's marked absent. You're looking, it's on the right.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I got you.
Okay. All right, so you have those amendments all duly noted down in the other end, or that amendment, I should say. Okay. We'll move on then with the original, back to the original motion. Is there any further discussion on the original motion?
I do have want to visit that again. There. Now I'm requesting to speak formally.
Okay,
Sorry about that.
Supervisor Patricia.
I was just curious, you said that that doing the 3% cost of living is going to be beneficial to the more junior.
Yes,
How's that? I'm just,
because they get a 3% cost of living plus their steps. So the steps
okay.
get added on. Yes. Supervisor Mastelier.
Thank you very much. I would like to make a motion to adjust the pay rate change from a 3% cost of living with a step to a 4% cost of living with a step. Now, based on this, the total increase of the salary, wages, and benefits of doing that would be $82,616. The Highway Internal Service Fund portion deducts $18,198 from that amount. The amount needed from the general fund, which is generously funded, the total would be $64,417. And again, it would not affect the tax levy in the least because we would be taking that money from the general fund. The rationale behind that, as we all know, inflation has increased. As of the end of March, inflation was at 8.3%. For 2022. The 12 months ending March 2022, inflation was 8.5%. The personal consumption index, excluding food and energy, has increased 5.1%. Food is up 11.9%. Energy is up 20.3%. And it's debatable depending on what you're talking about for energy. Those figures are as of yesterday morning. I mean, when I look back at fuel, and I'll use diesel fuel because I track diesel fuel. Before the pandemic started in early 2019, diesel fuel was $2.31 a gallon. Thursday morning, when we filled our tank, it was $4.83 a gallon. That's a pretty good jump. And gasoline and diesel fuel are both on that same over the period of time. Again, my motion is to increase the cost of living adjustment from 3% to 4% with a step.
I'm assuming you mean your amendment.
My amendment, yes.
So there is an amendment to move from the 3% that was recommended and approved by executive committee to 4% plus steps. Is there a second to the amendment? Okay, so there's a second. There is a, no, that's not the vote yet. So do not vote yet. So that is the amendment. Is there discussion to the amendment?
Who seconded the amendment?
You did.
I did.
Yeah, you did.
I tried to, but I think Joel Luke's, oh, that was the other one? Virginia's in there.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
Virginia's in.
Is there, do we have that sorted out? Okay, so is there discussion of the amendment? There was lengthy discussion at executive committee on this, and we did take these things into consideration. We also talked about sustainability to the county. So when these things are added, it all sounds nice, but those are ultimately added, and those are legacy costs, so to speak.
That was
to
a
the
question
county.
I posed to Paul.
So,
That is a sustainable
well,
item.
sustainable, that's debatable. Any other discussion? Other questions on this? All right, yes, Supervisor Kidder.
Your microphone, Supervisor Kinner.
Before we vote, am I allowed to vote on this? I'm voting for all of the county employees. Can I ask Corp Counsel that question?
Corporation
Or should
Counsel
I
would,
abstain?
Yes, you are allowed to vote.
Explain
Oh,
You were,
there is a request to Supervisor Patricia. Oh, so,
yeah, the vote that you have has an impact on all county employees, not directly on. So I think in this case, you're
all right, Supervisor Patricia. Did you still have it on, or were you speaking?
No, I wanted to say that something that is going to be detrimental and not sustainable, and that would be increasing the tax burden. I am definitely sensitive to being in the village where our taxes have gone up. As Supervisor Massler said, with this, it would be, it would not increase the tax burden to the taxpayer. And the increase of cost that everybody has had these last couple of years is definitely hard. And I think that in order to get the best amount of productivity out of workforce, they need to be well paid, well appreciated. And I think that during these hard times, if it's not going to increase the tax burden on our taxpayers, I think we should do everything we can to help our county employees out.
Supervisor Romden.
Again, I believe our employees are our greatest assets, and then we need to make sure they're well taken care of. And that was well stated by Supervisor Patrice. Thank you for that, those comments. I think when we vote on this, I think everyone should be willing to make sure that our employees are taken care of. The $64,000 that we're talking about here for this 1% plus the steps. In the budget, you're giving $40,000 of taxpayer money to KCEDC to run their budget. I think we can afford $64,000 of taxpayer money to pay for our employees. Thank you.
Supervisor Kroll.
Scott, in that, when we had that executive, correct me unless I'm wrong, but we never had, that was never brought up about the 4% in the steps. It was 4% and there was a bonus or something. We never
Right.
talked about steps.
We never discussed 4% and steps. No.
Okay, I
Um,
just wanted to make sure. It was the 3% in the steps or the 4%, and there was something else included with that, correct?
What I had, Supervisor Kroll, what I had submitted in my administrator's budget was a 4% COLA, freeze everyone in the step plan and give a 1.5% stipend. What had happened, or what the decision was of the executive committee, was to give a 3% COLA, no stipend, but instead allow for the steps depending on where you are in the pay plan. That could be anywhere from nothing to 1.5, depending on where you were in the step plan.
Because the steps were, otherwise more people were benefiting from one area, not the other
Well,
area.
from a distribution standpoint, over half of the employees are at the end of the step.
Yes.
So a step plan or a step increase has no impact upon them. So less than half are in the step plan, which means that a portion would get 1.5, a portion would get 1%, but over half of the employees would get no step increase.
We also discussed at that meeting that the actual wage increases have been 5.2%
Yep.
across the board, across the country. And that includes dramatic increases on the lower end when we talk about McDonald's workers and those kinds of things. So the idea that people are seeing, 8.2% or those kinds of wage increases, salaried positions and professional positions, we discussed at length that is not the case across the country. Anyway, any other questions? All right, yes, Supervisor Yonke.
Do the law enforcement union employees have a 3%?
3%. Law enforcement has 3%. So Sheriff's Department received 3% for in this contract for the 3 years of three-year period of the contract. Yes. Plus steps, 3% plus steps, which was another factor in the executive committee discussion.
That's what I thought.
Supervisor Romden.
Just to follow up on that, to remind everyone that the police sheriff's department, at least the patrol people, they're still in union. They do have the ability to bargain their wage, where the rest of the county employees do not. So that's just something to take into consideration also.
Supervisor Yonke. Oh, you were still, yeah. You have the floor. So, yes. And they bargained their way to 3%, of course. All right, any other discussion, any other questions? All right, you have the amendment before you. You may vote on it. Eight in favor, 7 against. The amendment is approved. All right, any other discussion on the, back to the original motion on the budget? Any other money we want to spend?
This, I know when we had originally talked about the jail, there was roughly $275,000 in salaries that we weren't going to be paying. And looking at the land and water conservation, where are those monies in the budget? Where would that be reflected? If there was 274,000 in wages, where?
I'm not exactly sure the question, Supervisor.
There were 4 positions when we were originally talking about the jail and coming up with the $600,000
Correct.
of funds to run the jail. And part of that was roughly 274,000 and some change in positions that were either not going to be filled or eliminated. And I guess I don't, looking at the land and water conservation, I guess I know one of them was like 96,000 for the person that was in charge of that. And I don't see that $96,000 of reduction in their budget. So
What you see in the land and water department budget, if you go to that, and I don't have a page number because mine don't have pages, but one moment.
181.
If you go to the Land and Water Conservation Department, which is on page 180, you'll see that under salaries and wages. That doesn't seem right there. Oh, that's. If you look at the 2002 adopted budget, which is the third column from the left.
Yeah.
That's 303,121. And then you see wages regular of 90,110. And then if you go to administrators proposed, you see 268,331. And you see wages regular of 47,772. I'm not touching on the retirement, the workers' comp, the health insurance and the like as well. But what you're seeing is that is the reduction. If you then go to page 183, that there are 2 positions that are removed from the land and water department. So there you see the reduction within the land and water department of the elimination of those 2 positions. I'm going to guess your next question then, Supervisor, is where did that money go and where can I find it? Is that fair?
That is, yes.
Okay, so then we go to, that money goes into the general fund. And where specifically, I'm trying to, would be on page 106. If you go down under non-department where it says expenditures, 106, this is probably about halfway down, the very last item in that second section where it says transfer to fund balance. You see $667,501. So part of that savings, well, the savings from the land and water department is part of that 661,501. The difficult part, and it's a very good question, Supervisor, is that it doesn't equal dollar for dollar, so therefore it makes it difficult to see.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And then this was all happening at the same time, so this is a little hard to follow right now. But then after this budget book was printed, on the front page of the sheet that was handed out, a budget adjustment number E, item E, jail staffing. It was determined how many and when would be hired in this year. So 297,000 was then put into the jail budget to hire the first, I believe it was 4, in 2023. The rest remains in fund balance because in 23 and 24, and eventually when the jail opens, we need to have that 680,000, whatever that is. So the rest has been set aside now, so it doesn't get spent on something else. And then we're scrambling in 2025 when the jail does open. Does that make sense?
Excellent question, Supervisor.
Other discussion on the motion? Supervisor Ramden.
Supervisor Ramden.
I said, I'm asking if that original 667,000 that was in your proposed budget was later reduced under a budget adjustment at the finance committee to 641.
Yes.
Okay. And that's where
And
the.
there've been a couple of ups and downs since then, but there's still, even with this last adjustment, there's still 463 in there.
Thank you.
Other discussion? Supervisor Lukes.
On these amendments that we just passed, when you're dealing with money, doesn't the board have to have a 2/3 vote, or doesn't it apply to
No,
amendments?
Not when you're passing a budget.
This is, that's a good question. There's a little bit of confusion. When you're approving a budget, that is a majority vote. When
Okay.
you're amending a budget, that's 3/4 of a vote. 2/3, sorry. So because we're approving the budget, that's a simple majority.
Okay.
If now, a week later after passing the budget, we wanted to amend the budget, that now takes a 2/3 majority.
Okay, I understand.
All right. Any other discussion? Any other questions? So we will return to the original motion to approve the budget before you with the amendments which have been passed. We're ready. Supervisor Langto. We have 12 yes, 3 no. Motion carries, so budget is passed with amendments. I just want to make the one comment on this. It is, impacting the tax rate and so forth, or no impact to the taxpayer. Anytime we add money to a budget, that impacts the taxpayer. That's taxpayer money. Whether it shows directly as an increase on the tax bill, we're ultimately spending taxpayer money. Moving on, consideration of ordinance. Previous board meeting, we have none. Communications, do we have any?
Yes, from Sawyer County, a resolution for advisory referendum regarding private funding of election administration. And from Oconto County, requesting the state of Wisconsin review and revise the entry-level compensation rate for assistant district attorneys.
All right. Kewaunee County events, do we have any? Quiet month in Kewaunee County, huh? All right, moving on. Comments from the chair. Just a reminder on gift cards. Apparently, some of you are receiving texts and emails from me in this regard. If you do choose to purchase gift cards for me, make sure that you deliver them to me in person, not to the number that is requesting them to be sent. Oh, you sent them to the wrong one? These scams, as funny as it sounds at the moment, and be aware, your email accounts, your county email accounts in particular, are very public, and therefore they are very highly targeted. And it seems that the chair's account is more highly targeted than others. And we frequently get these email or text message scams. It's, as we always say, time and again, just exercise really good judgment, be careful. Can I make that any clearer, Mr. Loining? Anything you want to add to that? Well, that one could have been. No. No, it wasn't. So anything asking you to send money, I mean, hopefully, and what they do obviously is there's a number of ways. Sometimes they will take out an email account that looks very similar. And so, maybe changing as much as one letter or something like that. And even sometimes spelling, my name correctly, but it's a different, where the email account is from. So there's just so many different ways that it gets done. And sometimes it's even text messages. Sometimes they even manage it, there's so much information that is public record. So they're able to get names, and so it's to the right person even. I'm sure the sheriff's department will tell you it's probably much of it is from other countries even. It's just one of those things where the best thing you can do is just not fall for it, because if you do, well, probably not much can be done, unfortunately. All right. Setting of meeting dates. The next one is our December 20th meeting, which of course is the Christmas party. You received the invitation for that. So hopefully you're able to join us for that. And we try to keep a light agenda at that one so that Supervisor Dell does not have to hurry to the dinner part of it. Then we have January 17th scheduled as well. February 21st, this is one that could have to change. My recommendation would be that we set it as the February 21st, and then we would know by next month if maybe, possibly next month if we would need to change it. If that seems amenable, I would need, do you want that on the pads or just a? So somebody, Supervisor Patricia, is there a second?
Second.
Supervisor Romden, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. All opposed, motion carries. Do we have a motion? Oh, we need a motion to adjourn on here. No, okay, is there a motion? Well, Supervisor Kroll already made it on there. Supervisor Poppy seconded. I'm assuming there's no discussion. Do we need to register the votes on here now that they've done it? All right, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We're adjourned.